So animation, give me one sec here. Okay, animation in Maya 2022. As Will said, I'm Mark Tanner. I'm the senior product owner of animation for Maya in Motion Builder. I've got 20 years experience in mostly games, some VFX, but I've been working in games and animation for many, many years using our products, working at companies like Ubisoft, Microsoft, short stint in VFX at Digital Domain and Capcom and Electronic Arts, to name a few. So I'm excited to show you all our new features. But first, I'd like to introduce you to one of our newest team members on the Maya team, Meghna.
Hello, thanks, Mark. So I'm Meghna Gupte, Senior User Experience Designer for Maya. Previous work experience has been briefly in software, but worked for over a decade as an animator for companies like Sony ImageWorks, Weta Digital, Scanline VFX, and Double Negative.
Awesome. So today, unfortunately, our special guest, John Denis, had a big project at ILM he's working on, but there is a great video of our conversation with him that we'll be showing after. He's the associate animation supervisor at ILM, as well as a teacher at Animation Mentor in his own Spongella animation workshops. He's got a great YouTube channel, so definitely check it out. He's been testing out all these new features in Maya, and here's a little video on some of the new features that we're going to be talking about today and getting his reactions about those features. First, we hit cache playback performance. I saw a note in the chat. Has there been any updates to animation performance and stability? This has been a huge focus for animation for the team this year. You'll see some great gains in cache playback and stability. We've got a new ghosting editor that also works with cache playback. We've also got the time editor, which also takes advantage of cache playback. So you'll see a theme here with all these new features. It's all about that runtime final frame quality speed. We've also got some updates to time slider bookmarks and some really great graph editor additions for both motion capture animation and keyframe animation. So we'll jump into our video with JD and Meg and I, and just talking about all the new features in Maya.
Hi, my name is JD, and I teach animation at the Academy of Art, Animation Mentor, and my own Spongella workshops. I also work at ILM, and I've been working for, let's say, 17, 18 years. And I use Maya ever since in school up until now. It's a great tool. I'm very excited to hear about those new features.
So JD, what is your experience with cache playback been like up until now? Obviously, you've seen these videos now and gotten a taste of it. What's your experience been like so far?
Now that I switched to cache playback, it's just generally anything that makes the scene faster as you animate is just better. I don't see why you would not use cache playback. It's so much better. Anything that makes it real time or close to real time in animation is just the best. That's
a great point. One of the things we're trying to do is really sort of open up the black box of cache playback, at least for animators. So one of the things we're trying to do with these videos and some of the updates is to really show what animators can do themselves, to just sort of fine tune the cache playback settings themselves. And depending on their hardware and depending on the scene and what viewport settings they have, there's a lot of little tricks there that they can do to optimize their scene. With your students, JD, do you see them using the ghosting editor and these types of planning tools in Maya to plan out their shots when they get started? Or
When I see this, I think of two things. One, it's just because I draw with my dry erase marker for my space. I got two of these, or two colors for what it is and what I want it to be. But sometimes it's just really good to have it clearly in scene, also with an orbiting camera, just to have it in 3D space. I think that with the custom functions of the opacity, the colors, all that is great. I would highly recommend that students would try it.
The key here is we've got cache playback enabled. You can try this tool out. You can experiment with it. If you have access to motion capture data or a library of keyframe data, you can really play with things here. So we're really excited about performance gains we have here, and then some of the new features where you can apply different layers of animation and get new animation performances from multiple takes. You're familiar with this, and you might use this one a little bit when you're reviewing animations, or how do you use this one, JD?
To me, this is so convenient just because you have it in your scene, and the fact that you can grab any control with any animation and then reposition it, that to me is just the best. Because I'm just, maybe it's my Swiss nature, but I like to be organized and to have it color coded and to know, this is still rough, this is more polished. Or if you give notes, right, if you do this in a teaching setting and you get a scene from a student, you can say, this works well, and then this needs more work, this is kind of rough, and you can change it for them. It's just a visual and just an overall organizational tool that I think is really great.
JD, I don't know how much motion capture you deal with, but we've added a bunch of new filters for dealing with motion capture in Maya. We're finding that more and more users are dealing with motion capture. Do you use much mocap in your workflows, or?
Yes, at work, which I'm not really allowed to talk too much about that.
Yeah.
But they have their own ways of cleaning things up, and every now and then you get maybe like a scene that's a bit more raw. So definitely looking forward to implementing that. My last couple of shows are kind of, the spaceships don't use mocaps. It kind of depends what you work on. I'm about to test out a Rococo mocap suit. So cool. I am very excited about any tool that will help me in terms of peaks and jitters and cleanliness.
That's
so
great.
It's always an issue, like with jitter, especially feet, just for dampening and just also keeping completely locked. Just there's so much help you need once you go outside of just a raw performance take.
On the flip side of that, obviously we saw some great keyframe workflow additions to AutoTangent, and the whole idea here is we want to make it easier for animators when you're going from a blocked-in scene, and essentially the first time you hit AutoTangent and really start the hard work with fine-tuning those curves in the graph editor. We've actually updated the math and the algorithm behind how the curves interpolate and how they behave when you move the keys closer or further away from each other. Mm-hmm. So how does that apply to what you do with your animators and your students and your own workflows?
I see quite a few students using that, and I think that new fine-tuning is going to help them a lot. I think it's definitely helpful at the very beginning, rough something out just to get it going, so you don't have to worry too much and spend all that time. It also depends on your workflow, right? Some people have not too many curves or not too many keys and rely a lot on curve manipulation, and some people just do every frame. So I mean, again, will depend on your workflow, but I would definitely use it. I see students use it for sure as an initial start. I think it's great, and especially the new tweaks are making it a lot better.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's that starting point. The old math behind it wasn't giving you an appealing curve like right out of the start, which is causing a lot of extra time just sort of getting a normal AutoTangent that you might expect as an animator. So you make a great point. It is the foundation. Of course, we have all the tools that are available to animators. You can break your tangents, you can weight your tangents, and really go nuts when you're fine tuning and polishing. But this should give you a good start and save you some time. All right. So special thanks to JD. First off, it was great talking to him. We'll hopefully have the full version of that video. It was about an hour long, talking about all the new features and what you can do with Maya and animation. Also, shout out to Rococo. They actually supply all the mocap for some of the performance, as you can see in the GIF in the bottom right. So big thanks to them for some of the mocap data. So let's get into the details here. So again, powerful animation tools is the focus here. In Maya 2022, our latest animation toolset update helps users animate faster with continued focus on high performance and efficient workflows. We'll jump into a bunch of those workflows in detail. Meg will actually present some of them as well. We've got a new ghosting editor, which allows users to see spacing over time, look at some of the arcs of their animations, and essentially plan their animations right inside the work viewport, all with cache playback enabled, so you get that runtime frame rate. We've got significant improvements, as you saw, to the time editor. The time editor didn't actually have capabilities for cache playback before now, so now that's enabled. And we've also got some great layering and additive animation workflows that we're going to show you within the time editor for editing mocap or keyframe libraries. And then finally, we also have the great keyframe workflows improvements to how auto tangent works. We've got 3 new auto tangents, which we'll jump into. So number 1, cache playback. Again, I saw this in the chat. This is huge for animators. And so in Maya 2022, we've really sped up the performance for regular animation playback, but also for simulation and dynamics. So this was a continuation from Maya 2020, but also years prior. More and more studios are using cache playback in production, and we're getting a lot of great feedback. We're tackling hundreds of bugs and issues and improvements recently that go into the latest version of Maya. We've also got some investment in image plane and image sequence support, which is great if you're doing VFX work. And then I've already mentioned the dynamics, but really the essence of cache playback along with dynamics and simulations is that real-time playback, live scrubbing your animation, and not having to play blast to see animation on your final frame character. Previously, you'd have to play blast that or render it, which takes a lot of time. And when you're iterating animations and constantly going over each animation, that's integral. So all of the tools that we'll show today is based on cache playback. So please keep that in mind. We'll jump into some of the details here in the next video. So we've got our octopus scene here. It's running at about 7.5 frames a second, full viewport 2 settings, anti-aliasing, ambient occlusion, full textures, and the whole deal. So it's running fairly slow. I'm on a laptop. It's a decent laptop, but we really want to show off the power of cache playback. So what I'll do here is I will turn on cache playback. And while the cache actually builds, you'll see it in the timeline, it builds up. I'll show you my settings here. So I'm in evaluation cache, basically the default cache playback settings. And now that our cache is built up, we'll hit play again. And you can see already, just with the default settings, we're already just about at our target frame rate, which in this case is 24 frames a second for this shot. So right away, some significant, triple the frame rate, which is awesome. All the same settings. This looks really good in the viewport, and I can go ahead and animate and iterate with real-time speeds. So if we right-click on the playback controls and go to playback speed, you'll see that we're in real time. And that's going to match the actual target frame rate in your animation preferences, which is 24 frames a second. But if you really want to see how fast cache playback can go, you can switch to play every frame free. You can see how much Maya can actually handle here. So this is taking the scene all the way to 140 frames a second. So you can load more characters, more complexity, and switch to these settings if you really want to unleash cache playback. So a great demonstration of just how fast and how real time you can get your animations playing with these nice viewport 2 settings to see your final frame quality animation at real time speeds. So yeah, shout out to ZooTools and all the folks involved with some of these assets and great animation scenes to demo this stuff with. It's been a blast showing all this stuff. Really nice models and animations, so thank you. I'll hand it over to Meg. She's going to present some of the new features in the new ghosting editor.
Thanks, Mark. So yeah, we now have a new ghosting editor in Maya 2022. As you all might remember, we had one in 2020, but now we have a way improved interface. And now you can visualize your animation. There'll be snapshots of animations through the scene. And now you all can manage how and what parts of the character you would like to visualize in the viewport. As you all have seen, the cache playback feature and ghosting editor takes full advantage of that, and which means support for deforming geometry. There is improved viewport to support and real-time playback. There's also a custom ghost display, and that will let you all manage multiple ghosted objects in one place. There are certain preset modes for different workflows, and you all can also control the color and opacity of your ghost. So I'll show you the next video where there will be all the features here. So we have an improved ghosting editor in Maya 2022. And let's take a look at this. So as you see, this is an animated octopus rig. and it's running in real time. I have my cache playback mode on here, and we also have bubbles in the scene. Now to go to ghosting editor, I head to visualize under animation. I click on open ghosting editor, and you see that we have an improved interface here. And this new ghosting editor is now designed in a way that brings all the features here in one place, and which means leading to a more optimized workflow. So in the earlier versions of Maya, you had to visualize and then either select one of these options here or go to the attribute editor and head to ghosting editor here, where you had all this information right here. And it wasn't very convenient. So now with this new ghosting editor, you can head directly here in this and change or use any mode you want to. So now with the bubble selected, I have the top node selected here, and I have the include hierarchy selected, which means I don't need to individually go here and select the geometry. Now, when I create ghosts from selection, you can see that ghosts are created on frames before the current frame and on every frame. As you also see that once we create ghosts, the geometry is included in the space out here, which means, again, you don't need to keep going to the outliner back and forth. Now, as you see, we have these presets here, and since we have it set on ones, we see ghost on every frame. Now, if you want to see ghosts every 2 frames, you click on this option. Whereas if you want to see ghosts every 4 frames, you can click on this option. Now, if you want to see ghosts before and after the current frame, you click on this mode. Whereas if you just want to see ghosts after the current frame, you can choose this mode here. We also have a custom mode. So in the custom mode, we have these options for frame step, pre-frames, and post-frames. So frame step is essentially the spacing between ghosts. And pre-frames and post-frames are the number of ghosts you want to see before the current frame and after the current frame. So if I increase my step size to say 9, you can see how the spacing between the ghosts has increased. And similarly, if you see, I have increased the pre-frames to 4 and I've increased it my post-frames to 4. You can see how the number of frames before the current and after keep changing. You also see that we represent these ghosts from post frames and pre-frames with 2 colors. And if you head to the display options here, we have the pre-frame color and the post-frame color. And feel free to choose any color of your choice for the ghost after the current frame or ghost before the current frame. There's also an option for changing the near opacity and the far opacity of ghosts. So right now, the values are set to maximum, but I usually like keeping my far opacity to the minimum. And as you see you can see how this opacity of these ghosts is changing. It just gives like a better contrast in terms of visualizing your ghosts. There's also a custom mode here. And I really like this mode because in this, I can go to any frame I want to. And if I just click here on add current frame, you see that say frame 97 has been added here. And now when I create ghost from selected, you can see that ghosts have been created on this frame. So again, I can just go around this frame, click on add current frame, create ghost from selection, and as you see, ghosts have been created on these frames. Now you can unghost any selected geometry by just going on one of the geometry shapes here. And if I click on Unghost Selected, you see that the ghosts associated with this geometry have been deleted. And finally, you can also click on Unghost All, and as you see, all your ghosts have been deleted. So that's about it for the ghosting editor.
All right, thanks, Meg. Next up, we'll jump to our time editor improvements. So in Maya 2022, animators can now set the time editor clips to be additive, allowing them to mix two different clips together to layer animation performances. Additionally, the time editor now supports cache playback, like I mentioned. So this allows animators to essentially hit play without needing to play blast when you're building complex scenes with multiple characters and multiple clips. Let's just jump into the video and we'll get into some of the details. So let's jump back into Maya here and take a look at some of the changes we've done to cache playback in regards to the time editor. So I'll turn cache playback on and play back my scene. You can see I'm around 40 frames a second before that cache playback builds up. Once cache playback kicks in and the cache is full, we're now at around 60 frames a second, which also happens to be our target frame rate for the scene. The scene is some motion capture data shot at 60 frames a second. So we're now hitting our target frame rate, which is great. When you have complex scenes, multiple characters in the time editor, you want to be playing back your animation at that target frame rate and really have those final frame quality representations of your characters while you animate and iterate on your scenes, the performances. So let's play around with these cache playback settings here. Right now we're playing at real time, which is the target frame rate for this actual scene, which again is 60 frames a second. We're going to change to playback every frame free and really see just how fast cache playback can perform. So as you can see, we're almost near double the frame rate when we go into the free mode, over 100 frames a second. So this really just shows the power of cache playback along with the time editor. So some really nice gains here in Maya 2022. So let's take a look at our new additive animation clips in the time editor. We still have our walk cycle here, but what I'm going to do is essentially loop out this walk cycle a few times to match this other clip that we brought in. This clip by itself is a character with just upper body motion acting hot. And we want to layer this animation on top of the walk cycle clip. So we're going to set this clip below to additive. And essentially what we get, simple performance of character acting hot. All right, so some great performance gains with the time editor. Shout out to Turbo Squid. They provided a bunch of other rigs like the Bat Sniper that you just saw. So thanks to them and everyone involved. Next up, we'll show off our time slider bookmarks. So you can use the time slider bookmarks to flag events on the time slider, drawing attention to moments in time for animation or for layout. Like JD said, bookmarks are useful in many different workflows when you work with events in time. But in Maya 2022, we've added even more controls. So we've added some new hotkeys like interactive move and scale using control drag and move frames with bookmarks, which is control and double click. So essentially, instead of having to manually type in specific frames for your start and end, much like the time slider works, you can actually manually go in and drag those around. And you can also select controls with those bookmarks that are associated with a character or something animated in your shot. We'll take a look at that in the next video. So let's jump into Maya here. We've got a scene of a character walking through the scene with some motion capture of a stumble. I've added a few different bookmarks using the bookmark manager. You can see an idle bookmark for when the character's standing and idling. Then I've got this other section here, walk start, where the character starts walking. And then finally I have the part where the character's stumbling, which might be the particular area I want to work on. So previously you couldn't move these bookmarks around by clicking on them. And what we've added is using the control button, you'll see this crosshair pop up. I can actually move these bookmarks around if I want to adjust the timing. I can also go to the end of each bookmark and scale these out. Before this, in previous versions of Maya, you had to go in and actually type in new numbers and do a bit of math, which was time consuming and not ideal. So that's a nice addition to have when you're really fine tuning both your animation, but also the timings of these bookmarks. The next hotkey we've added is the ability to select the timeline along with the bookmark as well. So if you control double click, it'll actually select anything in your time slider to go along for the ride. So if I have this foot controller selected with some keys on it, and I double click, I can actually move this bookmark, and now all the keys associated with it go along for the ride, which is really nice, again, to retime some shots along with the keyframes and the bookmarks together. All right, and next up we'll jump into our graph editor edition. So I'll hand it back to Meg to run you through this.
Sure. Graph editor additions. We have several improvements to the graph editor now in Maya 2022. And there are new filters we have, like smooth filter, there's peak removal filter, resample filter, and that would help cleaning up, resampling, and smoothing animation curves. There are also 3 new auto tangent modes, which are auto ease, auto mix, and auto custom. And that's going to definitely help reduce the amount of time needed to craft your animation curve shapes, especially the first time you'll start splining your shot. So I'm going to walk you all through the new auto tangents, and then Mark will go over the animation filters.
So let's take a look at these in Maya. As you see, this is an already animated character out here. Now let's grab one of the controls, say the root control. And as you see here in the graph editor, which is where most of the animators spend their time polishing their performance after blocking their shot. So let's select, say, for instance, their Y rotations. And as you see, this is a very typical animation curve. I have my buffer curves on. So let's see first what the existing auto tangents do. Now, if I select the keys here and I click on auto tangent, you can see that in relation to this buffer curve, the shape of the curve has changed drastically, and there is a very harsh entry into this point out here. So what animators had to do, they used to keep inserting keys here and adjusting the neighboring keys around to get a nicer ease into this point and ease out, thus spending more time and efforts. The new auto tangents will now address these issues and will give more appealing curve shapes, and also as per animator needs. So let's take a look at each one of these. So I grab these keys here, and now I click on auto ease. So as you see here, in relation to this buffer curve, the shape of the curve has not changed much in relation to this. And there is a very nice ease into this point and ease out. The next mode is auto mix. When I click on that, as you can see, that it has medium influence in relation to its nearest neighbor, which is this, and the curve doesn't ease into this point as much as the previous mode. Finally, it is possible to control the shape of the curve by using auto custom and changing the coefficient value. To go to auto customs, you go to tangents, auto, and you can see that a new menu has been added here in Maya, where you can see all the other auto tangents. And here is auto custom, where you click on this, which opens up this box, and you can see this custom coefficient value, which ranges from -0.5 to 1. Now a value of -0.5, so I'm selecting these keys here, and if I click on apply, you can see that the shape of the curve has changed, and this works pretty similar to the auto ease. Whereas a value of 0, if I click on apply, this works pretty much close to the auto mix, and a value of 1 works similar to our default auto tangents. You can also play around with any of the values you want here, suiting your needs, and to adjust the shape of the curve, depending on what you'll want. You can also access the new auto tangents by right-clicking on the graph editor, and you can see that these options have also been added under this menu out here. So we do hope that the new auto tangents will be a time saver, will help give more appealing curves and lead to a more efficient workflow.
So let's jump into Maya here. We've got this motion capture performance here running at 60 frames a second with cache playback. We've got the smooth filter and the peak removal filter. So the first thing I've selected is I have this knee controller here, and you can see I've got some keys that are all peaked and messed up. So I'm going to use this peak removal filter on this first. So you can see it did a great job of removing those peaks that were here, essentially those jitters that you get quite often with motion capture. So let's try this knee here. We've got the classic Euler filter fix here on this one. You can see we've got some nice curves here now. This particular area, we've got quite a bit of bumpiness. We're going to apply the smooth filter, smooth that out. So let's grab one particular channel. You can see some jankiness here. We're going to use the peak removal filter. You see how nicely that cleans that curve up. There are a few bumps here and there. We're going to use peak removal on that one again. You see what a great job it does on those types of curves. We'll grab these hands, which quite often have a lot of jitter in them. You've got a bunch of things happening here. I'm just going to smooth those out with the smooth filter, peak removal filter. See my cache building up. It's a fairly long scene. It's 365 frames long at 60 frames a second. But we've cleaned up those hands, gotten rid of all those jitters, have some nice curves there to work with. All right, so thanks again to Zoo Tools and Turbo Squid, everybody involved. You can see some really powerful new tools that animators use all the time, constantly. So that's been the focus, along with cache playback for performance. Special thank you to Rococo again for partnering us with the motion library and the motion capture data used in all these examples. UTools, Turbo Squid, JD, go check out JD's channel, as well as Harvey Newman. So Harvey Newman is more on the game side, but he's got some tutorials out on his YouTube channel going through all these new features. He had a sneak peek. And then most importantly, thanks to the Maya 2022 dev team. Thanks everyone for your hard work and congratulations.